So, folks, we are with Dan Siegel, but we're not talking about the mayor's race. We're talking about a very important lawsuit that really does have implications on a number of political matters in Oakland. But, Dan, tell my viewers what the lawsuit is about specifically.
Okay. We represent Daryelle Preston, who is the former Employee Relations Director for the City of Oakland, who was fired by Deanna Santana last year because of disputes about the way in which Lawana was doing her job. There were a series of disputes between Miss Preston and Miss Santana. Probably the one that's most explosive, because there was so much public interest in it, had to do with the criticisms made of Councilwoman Desley Brooks regarding her efforts to get the Rainbow Recreation Center open. And Ms. Preston's role in that was simply that Deanna Santana wanted her to sign off, first of all, on a report accusing Councilmember Brooks of misconduct, and secondly, to testify that she had witnessed a conversation between Miss Santana and Councilmember Brooks that Miss Preston refused to testify about.
This is really explosive. So basically what you're telling me and my viewers is that there was essentially a conspiracy to build up a false case, a phony case, against Councilmember Brooks. That's what it sounds like. Am I misreading? Am I saying that incorrectly?
I don't think you're saying it incorrectly, but I don't want to overstate it at this point. Mm-hmm. I mean, as you and a lot of people know, there were criticisms of Councilmember Brooks alleging that she circumvented various rules having to do with the use of city funds and the use of city labor power to get this Rainbow Recreation Center up and running. And it was cast by not only some members of the council, but by City Auditor Courtney Ruby as kind of a major act of misconduct on Ms. Brooks's part. And it was Councilmember Brooks's contention that she was certainly aggressive about wanting to get this Rainbow Recreation Center open because of its value to young people in East Oakland, and may have pushed a little too hard on it, but didn't break any laws and didn't break any rules. And as it ultimately came out in disputes before the city council, there were plenty of allegations of against several council members that they had, again, if not broken the laws or broken the rules, used their influence to push through certain kinds of favorite projects in the city.
Yeah. Well, Ignacio was known for that.
Right.
You know, Ignacio De La Fuente, the former District 5 councilor we're talking about, But
sure.
Yeah, that's Legion. That's what being, I always thought that was what being a councilman was all about. But anyway.
Well, you know,
I had to throw that in there.
And this is this is the kind of a conversation that could go off into various tentacles, right? I mean, some people might argue that giving each member of the council a certain amount of money to spend on projects in their districts was kind of inappropriate, if not improper. Right. It seemed to me that when a council member is allowed to use city resources or city labor power to plant flowers or paint a school building or something, what's really going on is that the city is contributing to that council member's campaign for re-election. But to put that aside, some people may rightly criticize Councilmember Brooks for pushing too hard on the Rainbow Recreation Center. But it seems clear to me that she did not gain any personal benefit from that and did not misuse city resources by utilizing them for an improper purpose, such as benefiting herself. What she did was she saw a long unfilled need in District 6 for the recreation center, and simply was very vocal and insistent that Rainbow Recreation Center be refurbished. And then, of course, there's a huge to-do about it when City Auditor Ruby castigated Councilmember Brooks and some members of the council, including Pat Kernigan and Libby Schaff, kind of joined in. And I think to a lot of people, particularly people in the African American community, this seemed very extreme on their part, and perhaps showed some measure of bias, or at least insensitivity, in criticizing Councilmember Brooks for something that other members of the council had done, or at least where they had done things that were similar. But getting back to Luana Preston's lawsuit, one, Santana asked her to sign off on a report finding Councilmember Brooks guilty of misusing property and influence, and she refused to do that. And secondly, which I'm sure was very embarrassing to Miss Santana, is that Miss Preston was called in front of the city council in a public session to affirm that she had been witness to a conversation between City Administrator Santana and Councilmember Brooks. And Ms. Preston went to the microphone and said, "Sorry, I can't attest to that conversation because I did not witness it." So again, I think that's probably, in terms of public interest, the biggest issue. But the issue which seemed to actually precipitate the termination of Ms. Preston, right. And I say precipitate because it occurred like the day before she was fired, was a dispute over a grievance filed by SEIU Local 10-1 over the city's unilateral decision to stop deducting dues from the paychecks of part-time employees who were represented by 10-1. And the city treasurer apparently made that decision. Whether she did it on her own or not, I don't know. But there was a grievance about it, and as Labor Relations Director, Ms. Preston advised members of the council and City Administrator Santana that the grievance of the union was well-founded. In other words, they were right.
Right.
I don't know why it was Ms. Santana's preference that these dues not be deducted, or what was the basis for her feelings about it, but she seemed to get very angry at Ms. Preston for indicating that the city was in the wrong.
Was Deanna trying to kill the union or something like that, or?
Look, I don't know. Right?
I don't want to put words in your mouth. But it does beg the question.
Right.
It's like it sets up a very disturbing environment. It sounds like an environment where you had, because she's been fired, a city administrator, arguably perhaps in cahoots with the mayor. I'm not certain. I don't know. Who used a heavy hand of power to a point where it from a perspective, it almost seems corrupt. And I just want to make it clear. That's me saying that. That's how it looks. That's not him saying that. I'm just making that clear. But you can't look at this without coming away with a point of view that's parallel to the one I expressed.
The relationship between the city and the unions that represent city employees has been somewhat strained for the last several years. And to some extent that's inevitable, simply because in the context of a negotiating relationship, each side is going to want to do the best it can do. And it's not the job of the city to simply cave in to the demands of the union, and it's certainly not the job of the union to cave into the demands of the city. The negotiating relationship should be one that creates fair outcomes for both sides. Having said that, it seems to me inappropriate and really conducive to negative relationships where the city having entered into an agreement with the union, consciously and intentionally violates it. And that's what appears to have occurred in this case.
What is the next step right now? Where are we in the process of this lawsuit?
It's just started. The case was filed and served a few weeks ago. The city has not yet filed its answer. Once they answer or make a motion or whatever, we'll get involved in that interplay. Ultimately, there will be discovery in the case. I'm looking forward to taking
That's going to be interesting.
Deanna Santana's deposition, probably at this very table, and to see whether ultimately the city is interested in resolving the case.
But in the discovery phase, will that extend as far as the city auditor, the mayor, any of their staff? How far in net can you cast?
Well, we can
Or will you
cast a pretty broad net. I think that the idea would be to gather information that's relevant to the lawsuit. If at the end of the day it turns out that the decision to terminate Ms. Preston's employment was made by City Administrator Santana herself, then that may end some of the inquiry. But if Ms. Santana testifies that she was urged to make this decision by other persons in city government, whether elected or appointed, we'll just have to pursue that as far as it goes.
What does this say, in your view, about how the city has been ran over the past 3 years under Ms. Santana and under Mayor Kwan, since Mayor Kwan hired her?
Well, I think City Administrator Deanna Santana was a real disappointment and a poor fit for Oakland. I remember when she was hired, there was a lot of excitement about her coming to Oakland. Mayor Kwan referred to her as like a sister, used the term sister. But I think that Deanna Santana's politics are not a good fit for Oakland. She has, in my view, turned out to be a rather harsh administrator who was insensitive to some of the concerns expressed by people in the city. Certainly was not a good leader in terms of her relationships with the unions that represent city employees, and clearly antagonized some members of the council unnecessarily. Again, in these situations, and of course I'm running for mayor, so I can see myself over there, there's going to be some tension because people don't always agree and interests are not always aligned. But the issue is, can you resolve the differences in a way that doesn't destroy relationships? The city, in my opinion, needs to have very positive relationships with its unions because, look, the city will function most successfully to the extent to which city employees are happy to be in their jobs, feel respected and appreciated. And in my experience, wherever I've worked, if the employees feel respected and appreciated, they'll give 110%. They'll give their best effort. And if they feel the opposite, then their effort will be correspondingly less.
What is the ultimate outcome for your client? Is a dollar amount damage? What is that, if it is that? Or getting her job back, or some combination of both?
Well, it's a little early to say whether it's possible to get her job back. She is working currently, but she might prefer to return to working for the city of Oakland. I know she was very pleased with her job here and had a lot of good relationships with other people in the city.
Been here a while.
I was in here for a while, right?
Yeah.
Since 2007.
Right.
And of course, there's some compensation to replace the income she's lost and will continue to lose, and perhaps also some emotional distress.
Now, I was under the understanding, as the city auditor's report came out, that, in fact, I think it says in the auditor's report that it was to a degree precipitated by the city administrator. Is that your understanding as well?
That is my understanding.
Wow. Dan, keep us posted.
I will.
All right,
You bet.
Okay, thanks a lot.